On a gentle spring afternoon, Elizabeth Watson stood before the tall windows of Luna. Her restaurant, a lovingly restored 19th-century mansion nestled in Boston's Beacon Hill district, watching the last rays of sunlight drape themselves across the polished glass and stone. Tomorrow would be its grand opening, the moment she had poured every ounce of her heart and savings into, and yet she stood there quietly, her palms pressed to the cool frame as if she needed its steadiness. Outside, a soft breeze carried the faint scent of budding magnolias and stirred the crisp, white linen tablecloths on the patio. The streets hummed with life, tourists wandered the red brick sidewalks, their voices rising and falling in snippets of conversation, pausing to glance curiously at the elegant facade of the new restaurant. Some even stopped to take photographs, intrigued by the combination of history and modern refinement that the building now exuded. "Perfect," Elizabeth whispered, her voice barely audible over the muffled sounds of Beacon Hill. She turned back inside, her eyes sweeping over the dining room she had crafted like an artist completing a canvas. The walls, painted a soft cream, were adorned with brass bracket lights that gave off a warm, golden glow. The oak floors shone, polished until they reflected the light like rippling water. Antique china cabinets lined the edges, each one restored by skilled craftsmen who had carefully tended to the wood grain and the delicate glass panes, piece by piece. 40 seats, no more, no less, each chosen deliberately for its own character, were arranged with precision around tables set with silver cutlery that caught the chandelier's light like a quiet gleam of stars. Above it all, the grand chandelier refracted light into 1,000 subtle colors, scattering a prism of brilliance over the room. It was not just a restaurant, it was a memory, a dream, and a story written into wood, glass, and light. Her hand slipped into her pocket and found the familiar texture of leather worn soft with time. She pulled out her grandmother's notebook, bound in brown leather and scarred with years of use. Opening it carefully, she saw the pages filled with her grandmother Margaret's graceful handwriting, recipes, notes, and little flourishes of thought tucked between the lines. Her eyes lingered on one in particular, the ravioli recipe. Instantly, memories came flooding back, memories of standing on a stool in her grandmother's kitchen, tiny hands coated in flour, pressing dough under Margaret's watchful eyes. The moonlight had streamed through the kitchen window, bathing them both in its glow, and Margaret had said with a smile, "The moon always watches over those who cook with love." That night had never left her, and neither had the name Luna. To Elizabeth, this restaurant was not just a business, it was an offering, a piece of her soul and her grandmother's legacy made tangible in the heart of Boston. Yet, even in this moment of peace, her thoughts slipped back to the memory that had haunted her for months, the family dinner 3 months ago. It had been held at Number N, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, where private rooms whispered of wealth and success. The table had been set with porcelain and crystal, wine poured into glasses that caught the dim candlelight. "Oh, Caitlin has closed another wonderful property deal this month," Martha's voice had carried across the table, brimming with pride. Elizabeth had watched her younger sister smile demurely, the pearls at her throat gleaming under the chandeliers. Caitlin's words had followed smoothly, as if rehearsed. "Yes, it was a prime real estate property in Beacon Hill. The commission alone will be $100,000, and next month, I'll be handling a vacation home in Martha's Vineyard." "Now that's my daughter," John had said, his deep voice full of satisfaction, a former investment banking executive. He adored these stories, deals, profits, returns. For him, value existed only in numbers, never in taste or artistry. Elizabeth had tried to remain invisible, but her mother's voice had cut through the air like a knife. "Elizabeth, how long do you intend to continue with that unstable job of yours?" The question made her pause, chopsticks hovering above her plate. Martha leaned back, her pearl earrings swaying as she spoke, her voice smooth and deliberate. A Wellesley graduate and a fixture in Boston's social circles, she carried herself like a woman certain of her place. "Being a chef is respectable, I suppose," she continued, "but no one in society takes a cook seriously. You should learn from Caitlin. You have talent, but you waste it in a kitchen." The words landed with a heaviness that stole the flavor from the delicately plated foie gras before her. Elizabeth stared down at it, the dish suddenly tasteless as paper. The silence that followed seemed louder than the conversation itself, pressing in on her like a weight she could not push away. And that was when Elizabeth had silently promised herself that Luna would not just open, it would flourish. The critic, his visit had been entirely unexpected, paused with his forecovering, as though the next bite demanded reverence. The quiet hum of the dining room dimmed in Elizabeth's ears as she waited, holding her breath behind the kitchen's half-open door. "Especially this lobster dish," he said finally, his voice carrying with a measured authority. "It reminded me of the clam chowder from my childhood home in Cape Cod, but it's been reimagined into something transcendent, nostalgia, yet reborn. This creativity is phenomenal." Elizabeth closed her eyes for a brief second, allowing the words to sink in. Praise from a local diner was one thing, but from Sterling, Boston's most respected food critic, it was something else entirely. That night, photos of Luna's dishes appeared on Sterling's official social media account. 1 million followers turned their gaze toward the little restaurant that, just months ago, no one had believed would survive. His caption was short but thunderous. "A new sacred ground of fine dining has been born in Boston." By morning, the post had spread like wildfire. Food blogs dissected the menu. Influencers reposted with glowing commentary. Reservation requests poured in, so many that the phone line nearly collapsed under the pressure. And then came the New York Times feature. A week later, Elizabeth's face appeared alongside a headline that read, "A notable chef bringing a new culinary revolution to America's East Coast." The article told the story she had never expected the world to hear: her upbringing, the struggles, her estrangement from family, the philosophy behind Luna. It wasn't just a review, it was a portrait, and from that day forward, the calls became endless, far beyond what Luna could manage. "Elizabeth, look at this." One morning, Tom, her sous chef, rushed over holding his phone. His hand trembled with disbelief. On the screen was a post by Gordon White, the celebrity chef known across continents. "In over 20 years of visiting restaurants worldwide, this might be the first time I've encountered cooking that moves my heart so deeply. Elizabeth Watson is undoubtedly the chef who will represent the next generation." His words were accompanied by a picture of her moonlight ravioli, the dish she had crafted after long nights alone with her grandmother's notebook. Within a single day, the post gained over 1 million likes. International food critics began making pilgrimages to Boston, and wealthy gourmets fought to secure a seat at Luna. Soon, whispers began circulating among the staff. "Today's guest might be a Michelin inspector," James murmured one afternoon as a reserved-looking gentleman entered the dining room, notebook in hand. Elizabeth's gaze was steady. "As always, our best cooking, nothing more." The gentleman dined for 3 hours, each course savored with a scholar's patience, every detail scribbled meticulously into his notes. No smile, no reaction, and yet Elizabeth knew, Luna was being weighed on a scale that could change everything. By then, Luna had become a beacon. Hollywood stars slipped in under discreet reservations, senators and governors made appearances, the kitchen buzzed with tension the day Jessica announced, "Tomorrow, the President and First Lady will be visiting." For a moment, silence. Then Elizabeth spoke with her usual calm. "We won't do anything special. Our guests, no matter who they are, receive the same best we always give." The next evening, Luna's staff worked with precision, hearts pounding, as the presidential couple dined in quiet awe. The following morning, headlines proclaimed, "Boston's rising star enchants even the president." From that day on, Luna's reputation soared into the stratosphere. "The waiting list has now exceeded 2 years," Jessica reported one afternoon, exhaustion mixed with triumph in her voice. "Even VIP requests are flooding in, but we're keeping to your policy, no exceptions." Elizabeth nodded. "That's how it should be. Every guest is equal here." It was that uncompromising principle that only heightened Luna's prestige. And then came the fateful call. "Elizabeth, it's Paris, Michelin." The phone in her hand trembled slightly as she lifted it to her ear. The words on the other side would forever mark history. Luna had been awarded 3 Michelin stars, just 4 months after opening, the fastest 3-star achievement in American history. The news exploded across the world. Television anchors discussed it with awe. Food magazines dedicated special issues. Her staff wept with joy in the kitchen. "Chef, look at this." Tom thrust another magazine into her hands. Forbes. Luna's estimated annual revenue exceeds $20 million. Chef Elizabeth's annual income expected to surpass $10 million. But Elizabeth only smiled faintly. For her, it was never about numbers, never about proving anyone wrong. It was about honoring her grandmother's legacy, about creating food that spoke to the heart. And yet, late at night, when the kitchen had gone quiet and the laughter of guests faded beyond the windows, she sometimes thought of her family, her parents, still at sea, blissfully ignorant, her sister, the silence between them now an unbridgeable gulf. Success had brought her everything, and yet left a shadow of loneliness she couldn't quite shake. One evening, bathed in the silver glow of a full moon, Elizabeth sat by the window with her grandmother's worn recipe notebook open on the counter. Her pen tapped softly, sketching out ideas for a new menu. Inspiration flowed like moonlight itself, quiet, steady, eternal. And so, under Boston's night sky, Luna continued to shine, not just as a restaurant, but as a star reborn, a beacon of brilliance, resilience, and legacy.